The notice hit my front door like a slap. $200 a day, starting tomorrow. I stepped outside and saw the HOA president already there, heels planted on my driveway, phone raised, recording the wheelchair ramp built for my father like it was contraband. "That structure violates community standards," she said. "Remove it or we escalate." At the top of the ramp, my father sat quietly in his wheelchair, staring past her like he didn't exist. I asked what she expected us to do. She didn't hesitate. "Use the garage or the side entrance," she said, "so he's not visible from the street." That's when I realized this was never about rules, and why the document I opened next made her smile disappear. She didn't wait for permission. The HOA president stepped onto my driveway like it already belonged to her, clipboard tucked under her arm, phone still in her hand from filming. "This structure was never approved," she said, tapping the paper against the wooden handrail. "Any exterior modification requires architectural committee approval." I kept my voice calm. "It's a wheelchair ramp. I built it for my father." She nodded once, the kind of nod people use when they're pretending to listen. "That doesn't change the process," she replied. "Our responsibility is to preserve the community's appearance." "The city already reviewed it," I said. "They told me no permit was required, and I followed their safety guidelines." She exhaled, clearly irritated. "City rules and HOA rules are not the same thing." I asked her directly, "So, what exactly are you telling me to do?" She glanced up the ramp just briefly, then looked back at me. "You have alternatives," she said. "A portable ramp, assistance, or using the garage or side entrance." "So," I said, "your solution is for him to come in somewhere people can't see him." Her jaw tightened. "I'm saying the front of the property needs to remain compliant." She flipped a page on the clipboard and held it out to me. "If the ramp is still here by tomorrow, fines begin. $200 per day." Then she added, "Flat and final. Enforcement has already been notified." The first violation notice didn't come in the mail. It was taped to the ramp, railing, bright orange paper, snapping in the wind like a parking ticket. "Unapproved structure day 1. Under it, $200 per day, starting tomorrow." Before noon, a white SUV crept past my house, stopped, then reversed. The HOA president leaned out the driver's window and filmed the ramp's slow, deliberate shots of the railing, the landing, and the way it met the porch. I stepped off the porch. "You're on my property." She didn't flinch. "I'm documenting an active violation," she said, phone still raised. "This is HOA business." Inside, my father heard enough to understand what was happening. He looked down at his hands and said quietly, "If it helps, you can bring me in through the garage for now." That sentence hurt more than the fine notice. "No," I told him. "You're not getting hidden because someone doesn't like how a ramp looks." That evening, the HOA portal updated. My account showed a new line item: violation, fine pending. No hearing, no explanation, just a meter ready to start running. I took photos of the notice, screenshots of the portal, and saved every timestamp. Then I opened a folder on my laptop and named it one word: ramp. 2 days later, the HOA made it official. A letter arrived on management company letterhead. It never mentioned my father. It called the ramp an unapproved exterior modification that altered the uniform appearance of the community. It gave me 2 options: remove it or relocate or screen it so it wasn't visible from the street. I went to the next HOA meeting. The board sat behind a folding table like a panel. The HOA president was centered, binder, open, smile, tight, and practiced. When homeowner comments opened, I stood. "That ramp is for my father," I said. "He uses a wheelchair." The city reviewed it and told me no permit was required. One board member started with procedure. "You should have submitted an architectural request first." Then the HOA president leaned forward. "Many families here deal with aging parents," she said. "They manage without changing the front appearance of their homes." I asked her how. She answered without hesitation: "Portable ramps, assistance, or bringing him in through the garage or a side entrance so it's not so visible from the street." The room went quiet. I said it clearly. "You're telling me to hide my father." Her smile tightened. "I'm telling you to comply with community standards." Then she ended it. "Fines begin Monday. $200 per day." The next morning, I took a day off work and walked into the city building department with a stack of papers thick enough to make my arm ache. Photos of the ramp, the HOA violation letters, the email chain where the city had sent me the slope and railing guidelines, a printed screenshot of the portal showing the fine about to hit. At the counter, an older inspector in a city polo flipped through everything. He didn't roll his eyes, he was too professional for that, but his long exhale said the words for him. "You built this ramp for a wheelchair user?" he asked. "For my dad," I said. "And they're threatening $200 a day unless I remove it or hide it." He stared at the HOA letter, then at the photos again. From what I'm seeing, the city didn't tell you to remove anything, and the ramp looks like it follows the guidance we send out. I asked if he'd inspect it and put it in writing. He nodded once. I'll come by this week. When he showed up at my house, he didn't treat it like a formality. Tape measure, level, calm, methodical checks, slope landing, depth rail height. After 20 minutes, he stepped back and ran his hand along the top rail. This is well done, he said. Safer than a lot of stuff I see. A week later, his email arrived with a PDF on city letterhead, ramp inspected. Meets residential accessibility and safety guidance. No permit required. No city objection. He even CC'd the HOA's email address. I sat there, staring at it, waiting for the relief to hit. It didn't. Because my anger wasn't about winning an argument anymore. It was about that sentence at the meeting, so it's not visible from the street, and how easily she'd said it. Like, disability was a stain. Like my father's wheelchair was a problem to be stored behind a door. I printed the city letter and slid it into my folder. If this was really about rules, they were done. If it wasn't, then it was about something uglier. The HOA's response proved it. Another envelope showed up, same letterhead, same cold tone, like the city inspector's letter had never existed. Despite your communication with the city, it read, the structure remains non-compliant with community architectural standards. They repeated the two options, remove it or relocate, screen it from street view. Then they added the part meant to break me. Fines begin on Monday. $200 per day. I didn't call the management company again. I didn't argue with the board. I went straight to the internet with the words I'd avoided saying out loud. HOA wheelchair ramp discrimination, reasonable accommodation, fair housing. Within an hour, I found a local disability rights organization with an intake form that let me upload documents. So I uploaded everything, every letter, every photo, the city inspection, PDF, and my written notes from the meeting, including Karen's exact line about using the garage so it's not visible. 2 days later, I got a call from an advocate who sounded like they'd heard this story 100 times. Ramps are a textbook reasonable accommodation, they told me, and the hide it from view language, that's not great for them. They offered to send a formal demand letter on my father's behalf because he was the person with the disability requesting accommodation. That night, I asked my dad if he was okay with it. He was quiet for a long moment, then he said, I don't like fights, but I hate being treated like something to hide more. Okay, I told him. Then we don't fold. A week later, the organization's attorney sent the letter, and the HOA's tone changed overnight. An email arrived from the management company. The board is reviewing this matter with legal counsel. All fines will be held in abeyance pending review. Translation, they'd finally realized this wasn't just an aesthetic dispute. It was liability. After the legal letter, the HOA stopped knocking on my door. They switched tactics. Everything moved quietly, emails instead of confrontations, executive session notes instead of open discussion. But the neighborhood felt it anyway, like pressure building behind a wall. At the next HOA meeting, the treasurer projected the budget on a screen and stumbled over a line item that hadn't been there before. Legal expenses increased. A homeowner raised his hand. Why are legal costs so high this year? The treasurer's mouth opened, then shut. Karen's eyes flicked toward him like a warning light. He cleared his throat. We've had unexpected costs related to a homeowner dispute. Nobody said my name. Nobody had to. When the meeting ended, people didn't rush out like usual. They clustered in small groups. I caught phrases as I walked past 200 a day. Wheelchair ramp insurance. Why would they do that? 2 neighbors stopped me outside. One said, I'm sorry, that hide it thing, that's messed up. The other said, if they can do this to your dad, they can do it to anyone. My mom uses a walker. What happens if she moves in? 3 days later, someone slid a flyer into my mailbox. No HOA logo, just plain paper. Special meeting recall vote. Time, date, location. The signature line already had dozens of names. That was the point of no return. That night, an email blast hit the neighborhood from Karen herself. Short, defensive, and loud, without using caps. Misinformation is spreading. The board has acted appropriately. Community standards must be protected. I didn't respond. I added the email to my folder. Then I printed 3 things and clipped them together like a weapon made of paper, the city inspector's letter, the disability rights demand, and the notes from Karen's not visible from the street line. On the day of the recall meeting, the community room was packed, standing room only. People I'd never seen at HOA meetings were shoulder to shoulder, angry and curious. Karen stood at the front table, chin lifted, smile, ready. Then the door opened behind me, and the disability rights attorney walked in calm, carrying a file like the room had just become a courtroom. The room went silent the moment the attorney walked in. Not awkward silence, alert silence. Conversations died mid-sentence. People straightened in their chairs. Karen felt it too. She adjusted her blazer and forced a smile that didn't quite land. "Before this meeting gets derailed," she said, standing, "I want to remind everyone that the board has always acted in the best interest of the community." No applause, just folded arms. She pressed on. "This situation has been unfairly framed as discrimination. In reality, it's about maintaining architectural standards that protect property values." That's when the attorney spoke calm and steady. "I'm here representing a resident with a documented disability who requested a reasonable accommodation." Karen's smile stiffened. The attorney placed a folder on the table. "This meeting is no longer about aesthetics. It's about whether the HOA knowingly attempted to fine and penalize a disabled resident for using an accessibility ramp." Murmurs rippled through the room. Karen opened her mouth to respond, and a county official stepped forward from the back wall. "Before you do," he said, "there's something we need to formally address." The attorney didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She opened the folder and slid one document forward. "This is a city inspection letter," she said. "It confirms the ramp meets all residential accessibility and safety guidelines. No permit required, no violation." Another page followed. "This is the HOA's violation notice issued after receiving that letter." A third document landed softly on the table, and this is a contemporaneous recording of the HOA president advising the family to use a garage or side entrance so the wheelchair would not be visible from the street. Karen shifted in her seat. "That's taken out of context." The attorney didn't look at her. "Context doesn't improve that sentence." She turned to the room. "Federal and state fair housing laws are clear. Accessibility modifications like wheelchair ramps are classic examples of reasonable accommodation. Penalizing or obstructing them is not a gray area." The county official nodded once. Karen's fingers tightened around her pen. For the first time all night, she wasn't in control of the agenda. Karen stood abruptly. "This board has always acted professionally," she snapped. "We never denied accommodation. We only asked for compliance." The attorney finally looked at her. "You threatened fines, you approved towing, you suggested concealment. Those are not neutral actions." Karen turned to the board. "You're just going to let them say this." No one spoke. The treasurer stared at his notes. Another member avoided eye contact completely. A homeowner stood up in the third row. "My mother uses a walker. If she moved in tomorrow, would you tell me to hide her too?" Applause broke out, sharp, angry, impossible to stop. Karen raised her voice. "This is getting out of hand." The county official stepped forward. "What's out of hand is exposing the association to liability." The recall vote followed quickly after that. Ballots passed, pens scratched, heads bent low. When the count was read, it wasn't close. Karen was removed. The treasurer followed. One board member resigned on the spot. Karen sat frozen as the room moved on without her papers shuffled, new motions made, control transferred. And through it all, no one looked at the ramp as a problem anymore. They looked at it as the line she should never have crossed. When the recall results were read, the room didn't explode. It exhaled. The whispers faded. Chairs scraped softly as people stood moving slowly like they'd just realized how tense they'd been this whole time. No one cheered, no one celebrated. The shared feeling wasn't victory, it was relief. Karen sat rigid at the front table, eyes open but empty. The remaining board members avoided looking at her as if one glance would force them to confront responsibility they'd been dodging for months. Neighbors began approaching me. Nothing dramatic, no speeches, just quiet, sincere apologies. "That shouldn't have happened. I'm sorry we stayed quiet." She crossed a line. My father sat beside me, hands resting neatly on his knees. His shoulders weren't hunched anymore. His chin was up, not defiant, just present. An elderly woman with a cane stopped in front of him and looked him straight in the eyes. "Thank you for not disappearing," she said. "If it was you today, it could have been me tomorrow." My dad swallowed. "I just wanted to use my front door." That sentence moved through the room. No one argued. No one tried to justify anything. For the first time since this started, I wasn't bracing for the next hit. The disability rights attorney stepped forward, not triumphant, not emotional. She opened her file and spoke evenly, like someone closing a case, not telling a story. "The Homeowners Association will formally recognize the ramp as a reasonable accommodation," she said. "All fines related to it are permanently void. Any prior enforcement actions, including towing authorization, are rescinded." She turned the page. "The HOA will also revise its governing policies. From this point forward, disability accommodation requests must be handled through a documented process with legal compliance review and may not be denied based on aesthetics. Someone asked, "Will there be training?" "Yes," she replied immediately. Mandatory fair housing and disability rights training for board members. The city official added voice firm and precise. For clarity, the city confirmed from the beginning that the ramp met safety and accessibility guidelines. This was never a code issue. It was a conduct issue. Finally, the attorney addressed what no one could avoid. There is a settlement payment to the affected resident. No numbers were mentioned. None were needed. Everyone understood what that meant. The HOA had crossed a line and paid for it. When we got home, my father rolled himself up the ramp. No cameras, no paperwork, no one measuring angles or taking notes. Just the sound of wheels on wood and the familiar creak near the top. He stopped on the porch and took a deep breath, looking out at the quiet street. A neighbor walked a dog past the house. A delivery truck slowed, then kept going. No stares, no judgment. "This thing's solid," he said, tapping the railing. "You built it right." For the first time, the ramp was just part of the house. Not a symbol, not a battleground. Later, the HOA sent out a vague email about moving forward and community values. I didn't read past the subject line. I didn't need to. The neighborhood had already learned the real lesson: what happens when small authority is used to shame people, and what happens when someone refuses to disappear. My dad sat on the porch until dusk. Not to prove anything, just because he could. And that was the ending that mattered most. Not about HOAs, not about laws, but this. The moment you let someone decide who deserves to be seen, you've already lost. This time we didn't.